Hello. I thought I would make a fairly quick, fairly short and opportunistic video today, just to look at a recent acquisition of mine, something that's been on my wish list for a long time. And it's readily available, and I don't know why I've not picked it up before now, but I just happened to a few days ago. It is the Night Sun Tarot by Fabio Listrani, who might be familiar. If you don't know this deck, he also did the Santa Muerte tarot, with that sort of Latin American Day of the Dead feel to it, which I haven't seen except in videos. It looks similar sort of quality of art style. A lot of people say that the Night Sun Tarot is a particularly dark deck, so to lighten the mood, I've brought along a Clockwork Penguin. Just in case any of the images are disturbing, you can look at the Clockwork Penguin instead. The reason I said that this was opportunistic is because in one sense this is a very dark deck, in that all the colours on many of the cards are very dark indeed. And today just happens to be a brilliantly sunny day. So with plenty of light, I hope that the images show up on the video rather better than they would under artificial light. I have had this for only a few days now, and I think this is an amazing deck of tarot cards. I'm going to quickly run through some of my favourites and then say a little bit more about why I particularly like this. So it's published by Scarabeo, so everything's standard for a Scarabeo deck. Tuck box, multilingual booklet. Now we'll come back to the booklet because I think the booklet here is it gives you, it's in several languages, so you get your standard, I think it's 14 pages of English, and it is a lot more useful, I think, in those 14 pages than an awful lot of little white books are in an awful lot more space. It's very, very good indeed. But let's look at some cards while the sun is still out. Here is our Magician. Now, this sets the tone for the whole thing. There is imagery heaped on imagery heaped on imagery in this card, in these cards. It's a deck with a lot of multicultural influences. It's a deck with a lot of fantasy influences. But in among all that as well, there are so many references to the various magical traditions and occult traditions and esoteric traditions that have mixed in with the tarot over the years, and very, very cleverly done. Here, for instance, look, the Magician. Look in some detail. Obviously he's got his elements laid out in front of him, the sword, the cup, the wand, and the coin. The 777 here is a reference to a text by Aleister Crowley. On his wrists are tattooed, wonder if we can get those, yeah. On his wrists are tattooed the words thelema and agape in Greek, which mean will and love, and of course again are a reference to Crowley's thelemic magical tradition there. The element signs are on his robe there. Come on, focus, focus, focus. There we go. The element signs are on his robe. Let's ignore for the moment that he seems to be vomiting prayer beads. I don't know what that's about. That will be a reference to something that I just don't know about, because everything in this deck seems to be a deliberate reference to something else. There seems to be very little accidental imagery in this deck. But again, look at what's behind the Magician here. Now, all of the pentacles, sigils, magical symbols in this deck are real, in the sense that Listrani hasn't made them up. And they all seem to serve a purpose. Here the Magician is linked with the planet Mercury. There's the sign for Mercury in the top there. And what's behind him on that wall is from the Key of Solomon, is one of the pentacles of Mercury, and this pentacle is a sign for summoning the spirits associated with Mercury in the Key of Solomon. So very deliberate reference there, very clever reference, and it, like I say, it sets the whole tone for the deck. It is absolutely brilliant. The range of multicultural, multi-referential imagery in this deck is, I've never seen anything like it. Let's move on quickly while the sun shines, because this is a very dark card, the High Priestess, and she gives you a very different image from virtually any other that I've seen. She's reading, the book she's reading isn't the Torah, it's the Lesser Key of Solomon. Behind her on the chair is a little band with the Latin word for wisdom on it. And even in this bright light you can't quite see, but there's a cage beside her, and in that cage is a human heart. And on the palm of her hand there's an egg, an unhatched egg. And whereas we often see the High Priestess or the Popess as indicating a sort of inner spirituality and wisdom and all of that, here there is that, but she's also given some connotations of holding something back, of an inwardness that isn't entirely beneficent. So yeah, she's holding back when she doesn't have to, and so she's not entirely a beneficent image in the way that she often is in other decks. Really nice image, very, very dark, literally in terms of colour. The Hermit is irresistible. He's beautiful. I don't know quite what's going on with him, with that rather odd headdress. It reminds me slightly of Gary Oldman's Dracula from the movie from about 20 years ago. Rather glorious, isn't it? And he seems to be looking out of the card straight at the viewer, which I think is lovely. Lots of sort of sacred geometry going on in the background. He's got the snake at his feet. Lovely card. The way the light is handled in that card is really exceptional. Really very nice indeed. Slightly out of sequence, the Lover's card. Now here's one where I haven't been able to track down what that magical symbol in the background is, which you'll see when the camera focuses. There we are. But here again, there's light and dark in the same card. In the background you see, again, more Latin words. Sorry about that, I just knocked the camera. And the word on Cupid's band there is choice, electio, and the words behind the other three figures seem to denote joining together and separating. Now another level of imagery here is that this refers to the Thoth tradition, where the Lover's card is seen as the marriage of the Emperor and the Empress, and those are the two figures you see either side of the card. To take it further, the Emperor and the Empress, and a lot of the royalty in these cards, their crowns are crowns of thorns. Again, an amazingly rich reference going on there. But if we can see it on the card, I'm not sure we can in this, even in this bright light. What's going on down there is that the Emperor, the guy on the left, he's got a manacle, a shackle around his wrist with a chain trailing off it. And the celebrant of the marriage is holding a padlock and key. So there's either something very witty going on there or something very cynical. And I like it very much. There's so much you can read into these. And you see something different every time you look at the card. It's wonderful, wonderful stuff. In terms of the image, this has to be one of my favourites, the Tower. Look at that. Come on, focus properly. There's not a lot of, the tower's not sort of collapsing under the lightning or anything there, but there is obviously some devastation going on. The Everything around the tower seems to be in ruins. It's very dark. And interestingly, doing the research, that pentacle behind the tower in the sky is one of the pentacles of Mars in the Key of Solomon. There's the symbol of Mars in the top left of the card. And it's associated with the text from Exodus about the plagues of Egypt, about the plague of the hail of fire falling on the land. That is such a clever way of referencing the tower. It's wow. But you have to do the homework. You have to do the research to find this out, because there's nothing about it in the accompanying book. This is just me Googling about various magical references. And oh, I've got sunlight. Look, let's have a look. There you go. There's the tower in sunlight. It's astonishing. It's very beautiful. Very beautiful. Again, multicultural. Now I'm going to have to look this one up because I keep forgetting the words. The world is the Hindu god Shiva dancing. Now, before I look up the right word for this, look at the imagery around. In each corner, instead of the standard evangelist symbols, the four creatures, in the top left there you've got the cup, the symbol for the element of water, and the platonic solid, the dodecahedron. In the top right you've got the sword, the symbol for air, and I think it's the, let me get it right, it's the octahedron, I'm not sure, I think so. And similarly in the bottom corner, so you've got the suit element, the platonic solid, and the classical element. On the sort of wreath behind Shiva, again, focus. On the left side here, there's a skull, presumably denoting death. And on the right side here, there's a fetus or a baby, symbolizing presumably rebirth. Glorious, absolutely beautiful. And of course, anyone who knows anything about Hindu imagery will know this word. I have to look it up, I'm afraid, because I'm very ignorant. It's the figure is called a Nataraja, the dancing Shiva, and the pose of Shiva here on the card corresponds very exactly to the classic Nataraja figure, even down to at the very bottom here, Shiva is dancing on a vanquished demon who symbolizes ignorance. Isn't that wonderful? Absolutely wonderful. A few minors that I'm going to go through just for the pictures. The minors are a lot simpler. They don't have that wealth and richness of symbolism, but they're more than merely basic. Oh, I'm getting some proper sunshine. There we are. Ace of Cups. What I love about the cup suit in this deck is the colours, that beautiful greenish blue background onto almost all of the cards is wonderful. The images in the deck seem to be computer generated, but they're very well done indeed. It's a great piece of computer generated artistry. King of Cups there. That's such a lovely image. It sets the pattern for the court cards here. That the element symbol, the up or down triangle with or without a stroke through it, is in the King and Queen cards throughout the deck. The Two of Pentacles I like. You start to see here what I say about it being multi-referential, multicultural. The interpretation of the cards doesn't stick to any one of the familiar traditions, but just now and then you'll see it coincide with Rider-Waite, you'll see it coincide with Thoth, you'll see it coincide with Marseille. Sometimes it does its own thing. The Two of Pentacles in this deck is supposed to represent, one of the things it's supposed to represent is instability. And here, this person sort of trying to balance on two coins on the ground there is a lovely figure of instability. And again, the 6, I forget what it denotes, but it's not a Rider-Waite interpretation. And the one single apple hanging from what seems to be a dead tree with the pentacles on the ground is just such a lovely image. Ace of Wands. The Wands have this gorgeous red background to them. The 10, here's one where it almost becomes a pip deck, just 10 wands arranged in 5 pentagrams, 2 pentagrams. But in the middle, you get this thing in this deck with a few symbols recur throughout the deck, and one of the symbols that recurs throughout the deck is an egg. And sometimes, we've seen it in the High Priestess card, sometimes it's a whole egg, sometimes it's a broken egg, and here in the middle of the wands is a broken egg. Another thing that recurs is that cage that we saw in the High Priestess card. That keeps coming up. And in that way, the cards seem to tell a story, but because you keep spotting these symbols that keep coming up and up again, like elements in a story. This has to be one of the most beautiful and beautifully disturbing 10 of Swords I think I've ever seen. And the Knight of Swords, look at the energy in the Knight of Swords. Yeah, people, we often talk about the Knight of Swords having this sort of impetuous nature. Well, here he is riding his horse off the edge of a cliff. Glorious. Really beautiful. I'll just go through one court. The court cards, Listrani says, are these all going to fit? They might have to overlap a bit, or I might have to move that out a bit. Off you go, Clockwork Penguin. The court cards, according to Listrani, should be read in the order Page, Queen, King, Knight, in that order, not in the Marseille or Rider-Waite order that we're used to of Page, Knight, Queen, King. This is part way between that and the Thoth tradition. And I think the rationale of this order, if I remember right, is that the knight as a sort of messenger figure, as a sort of rider figure. Will you please focus? Let's ignore the focus for the minute. The knight as a sort of person on a mission heads the court, and in a way sort of takes the energy of that element out of the suit and to somewhere else. And it kind of makes sense. And sort of there's the Court of Wands looking absolutely stunningly beautiful. There are very few cards, I think, here that don't work. Some people, if you look online, they criticise this or that card. There's a few that haven't quite clicked with me yet. The 10 of Pentacles, I haven't really read much sense into that yet. It seems to be an ox sitting on the ground. I don't quite know what that's about. I'm not sure I like the background to the Justice card. It's very, what's the fellow's name? Is it H.F. Geiger? Which I've never really been a fan of. But nevertheless, some very interesting elements there. And another one that looks slightly odd, although I love the idea, is the Wheel of Fortune card. What we've got here is that a sort of wooden automaton cranking a wheel. And the idea is that those things in the background are the hexagrams of the I Ching, and presumably cranking the wheel produces a hexagram from the I Ching to symbolize chance, fortune, something along those lines. I think it's really clever, but the image doesn't really click with me. But on the whole, this is an astonishing deck. I said we'd come back to the booklet very briefly. There's a lovely 2 or 3 page introduction before you get to the card meanings. What I especially like is that each of the major arcana have a question associated with them, which you can use as a meditation tool. The minors are simpler, but they are there. And like I say, it doesn't follow any of the major traditions. It has its own interpretive tradition. So, it pays to sort of, if you want to do the written meanings, it pays to sort of look them up. What I especially like, though, is that the minors in this deck are ascribed meanings according to a simple numerology, which makes sense. It's consistent. It's consistent throughout the suits, and Listrani here actually gives the numerology. It's simple enough, you know. Number 1, beginning. Number 2, accumulation. Number 3, action. Number 4, stability. Familiar enough themes, but I think he communicates them in the deck in a really good way, in a way that absolutely excels at what he's trying to do. And that I think is one of the best things about this deck is that it has that numerological base to it, which is very clear and very consistent. In terms of how readable it is, I think it's very readable indeed. I think it's very difficult to put 3 cards down and not have them tell a story. 6 of Cups, Queen of Cups, Knight of Pentacles. Just look at that, and you know, a few minutes spent on that and you'd be telling the story. Here's this person seeking to have this empty cup refilled from somewhere. Here, similar person in an image of fulfillment, possibly pregnant, possibly something new happening, having been filled, and then because of this fulfillment, this sense of fulfillment, perhaps going out into the world with a new energy here. I really like it. I really like the Knight Sun Tarot. Some of the images are disturbing. Some of them are quite explicit in terms of sex and violence. If that sort of thing disturbs you, then it's probably not the deck for you. If that sort of thing fits in with your worldview and how you like to read the cards, it's fantastic. Really, really great deck, and I'm looking forward to using it a lot. And like I say, if you don't like it, set off with a clockwork pendant. Thanks for watching.